when they started the Exacta in Southern California, it was a $5 base bet. $5. It took you $10 to box 2 horses in the Exacta when it was first introduced in Southern California. That was pretty expensive. Then they got down to $2 Exactas. I remember they had $2 Exactas at in Southern California in the first race at Los Alamitos. They had a $2 Exacta. It was such an attractive bet, the $2 versus the $5 Exacta, that in my younger days when I was kicking butt, taking names, drinking beer, eating pizza, and life was good on the beach, we used to drive from Redondo Beach to Cypress, the Cypress area. It was actually Los Alamitos, in time for the first race at Los Al just because it was a $2 Exacta. All right, so things have evolved. Then they became the $2 Exactas, and you got $2 trifectas, your $2 pick 6. Remember when the pick 3 first came out, it was a $3 bet? The pick 3 was a $3 base bet when it first came out. Now you see the pick 3s drop to $1, the popular pick 4 drops to $1, the immensely popular pick 5 at Monmouth, now 50 cents. And along came the superfecta dollar base bet, and that became too expensive too. So now we got 10-cent superfectas. Now it puts all of us in the game to put those fringe horses and the all button into play and actually have an opportunity on smaller budgets to make a big score. And the only thing that hasn't changed in the evolution of the base denomination bet for exotic wagers is the pick 6 in Southern California. It stays at $2 because that's the way they get the pools up there. And this newfangled $1 super high 5 bet. That hasn't dropped yet. It's still a super high 5 for $1. But everything else has adjusted to the customer. Well, now when you got 10-cent supers and you got 50-cent pick 4s and all that, there is a way to build tickets to give you a big advantage. A gentleman by the name of Paul Lambrakis is with us today. He published a book called for 10-cent superfectas. And so he must have some type of a game plan so we can use that dime to lay out bets. And building bets now is just as important as picking the horses. Trust me when I say that. It's the old money management thing again. You can pick horses, but you got to know money management. And I am deficient in that. I can say that. Sometimes I just do not manage my money well. I'm learning how to build bets better. But when you got the 10-cent base superfecta now, you can do some damage. So let's see how we can build some bets. Paul, good morning.
Good morning, Ralph.
How you doing?
Doing great.
Tell everybody about yourself first.
Paul Lambrakis. I started going to the races when I was in the 8th grade with my dad. I got to see a native diver run in the 8th grade, and then the rest is history, as they say. And about 15 years ago, I went to work for Santa Anita as a handicapper for the group events department, and I do their newcomer seminars. And then around 2005, when the 10-cent superfecta hit Southern California, it started a whole new life for me. I became a 10-cent superfecta bet specialist, and this all evolved into a book that I did a self-published version, and then did a newer version that was published by Today's Racing Digest. And it's a great book. It's everyone. It's a useful book. It's not a system or anything like that. It's just some good practical advice on how you can turn a dime into hundreds or thousands of dollars at your local racetrack without having to spend a lot of money.
All right, now you gave us the background, but how did you become, quote, the expert, so much so in figuring out these 10-cent superfecta bets that you actually wrote a book on it? I mean, what gave you the experience, or what brought you to the plateau of being an expert on this, that people would get your book and say, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, let me take a look?
Okay, well, it all has to do with a set of cost tables that I developed for myself. Back in the day when the 10 centers first hit, I mean, you can remember, Ralph, how hard it was. If you weren't doing a box, you had no idea what your betting combination or partial wheel was going to cost you, and people were spending time at the self-service machines punching in numbers. That's too much, and then trying it again or going to the clerks. And anyway, so I decided I got tired of doing that myself. So I have an accounting background, so I'm used to doing monotonous, boring things. Anyway, it took me a couple of weeks, but I came up with a set of cost tables. So I could immediately look up the cost of whatever configuration I wanted to play. And I had it broken down by if I wanted to cover 10 horses in a race, I had these choices. If I wanted to cover 8 horses, I had this. Then I had it broken down by how many key horses I wanted to use. Did I want to use 1 key horse, 2, or 3? And anyway, so I use these for myself, and, slowly but surely, people come up to me, oh, yeah, what's that? And I tell them what it is. Oh, can you print me out a set? Sure. So all of a sudden I just started, printing out these cost tables for people, and then someone said, well, why don't you, see if you could sell them in the gift shop. And then that didn't sound too good of an idea. And then just talking with friends, they go, why don't you just put a book out on this? People don't know what the hell they're doing with this bet. Why don't you just give them, explain the bets and, basic strategy. And so then I started, I said, well, maybe, that would be something to do. And then the key was when someone said, make it a pocket-sized book so someone could take it with them to the track every day and it just fit right in their program. And all of a sudden, boom. There's an idea, and I went to Jim Quinn, who is a colleague of mine over at Santa Anita, and he thought it was a great idea, and then I started going from there. And I played superfectas a lot in tournaments and things. I never had the deep pockets to make it part of my daily wagering routine, but I always loved the bet. And now, I remember in 2005, you hear these stories, and a woman wins $20,000 on a dime. I said, well, I want to try that, So anyway, it's a 2-part book. The beginning is just kind of an introduction, a history of the bet, and the different playing methods, the advantages and disadvantages, and then, my strategy, how I take it together, and then the second half is the cost table. So you put something together, you flip to the back, you just find the configuration, and you know exactly what it's going to cost. If it's too much, you change it. And it's been, been selling, regular since, forever. I mean, it's just a great book. And
well, let me just give you my experience. When I'm starting this with the super high fives now. When I'll kind of write down the numbers in the sequence that I want in a super high five before I go up, and then I'll wait until, because here in Las Vegas, we got all this simulcast, you got races every 2 minutes.
Right.
I'll wait until there's a lull, like there's a 5-minute, 10-minute lull, and sometimes that happens because these racetracks aren't smart enough to stagger their post times. You'll have a cluster of races, and then 10 minutes of nothing, and then a cluster of races. Sometimes they'll stagger, but most of the time they're running over each other. They shoot themselves in the foot. But in any case, that little period of there gives me an opportunity to run up to the mutual clerk, a ticket writer, and it's one you got to know, you got to be familiar with, and says, listen, I want you to punch this in, but I don't want you to print it. Just tell me how much it costs first, and I'll do it. And they'll say, $124. And I'll say, okay, back that up. We can't afford that. We're going to stay in the $60 or $40 range. And then we kind of massage it from there. And I can tell you that sometimes I'll walk up and I'll have all these numbers written, and I say, punch it up and see what it costs. And I don't know whether the thing's going to cost $124 or $36, because you're sitting there handicapping, you're sitting there building the bet. The last thing you're doing is calculating the bet. I mean, really, that's almost the last thing anybody does when they're betting and trying to bet these type of combinations. And sometimes they'll say, okay, punch it out, and they'll say $36, and they'll look at me, and I'll look at them and say, man, that sounded like it was going to be a whole lot more money, didn't it? And so there is an absolute need for this if you are somebody who isn't as lazy as I am and just goes up and let the guy do it. But I mean, this is not good practice for people, because you can't, at the racetracks or any other place, including simulcast centers, be dependent on the fact that you're trying to hit a little lull where you don't get a guy locked out. Last thing I'm going to do is walk up to a window with a guy trying to make a bet in a race and get him locked out because of my stupidity. I always wait until, there's no lines there, and go walk up to a guy and just do that. So there is an absolute need for a book like this. But then again, the book has to be simple to read. So let's say I'm sitting there and saying, I really like 2 horses. These 2 horses I want to key on top.
Okay.
And naturally, you're going to put them in the sequence in the second, third, and fourth hole for superfecta purposes, because if one of them wins and your link-up horses finish second and third and one of them finishes fourth and you don't have them across the four slots of the superfecta, you're really going to look like an idiot saying, well, I thought he was good enough to win. How, you can't think he's good enough to finish fourth. So let's say you want to do 2 key horses to maybe 4 other horses and those 2 key horses repeating in second and third spots. Do you have formulas that come up with that in this book? I mean, are there like examples, page after page of whatever configuration you want, or do you teach people in the book a formula to say, if you have A, B, and A, B, C, D, and blah blah blah, this is what it's going to cost?
Okay. Let me answer the question for you. Yes. The book starts out with, like I said, explaining the different popular methods of play, and then I get into doing a part wheel, which is the best way to play, and keying horses, and my philosophy is that as you move down with each slot, you add more and more horses, because with each slot it gets more unpredictable. Right. As you go down. So
sure.
My basic philosophy is, this is the way I play. I try to just key one horse, and I always take all in the fourth hole. So that means I only have to, if my horse wins, I already got fourth covered. I just got to get lucky in the second and third hole. So I show them step by step how to construct the ticket, how you look at a race. It's a 10-horse field. Okay, you want to cover all 10 horses. Then you're going to go to the chart. It's going to give you all a bunch of examples how you can cover 10 horses in a race. So let's say you have a 10-horse field and there's 2 of them you don't even want to waste money on them. There's no way they're coming fourth. So now you've turned this 10-horse field into an 8-horse field. So you want to cover all 8 horses, and there's examples on how to cover all 8 horses. And I personally use a bottoms-up approach. Okay, when I put my ticket together, what I like to do is I don't play at every race, and I don't recommend everybody play. Just find a race where you have a good feel, where you feel like you've got it's got to be at least a 10-horse field. You got to think you have the winner. Hopefully, the non-favorite, but you can do good with a favorite too. And then you start off in the top slot with your horse, and then you put everybody for fourth. And then I use a bottoms-up approach, where I look at each horse one by one in that fourth hole. Which one of these could realistically finish third? And then I start moving them up one at a time. So now I've got my third position filled, and then I go one more step up from there. Which one of these can realistically finish second? And then there it is. I got my configuration. I see I got, let's say, 1 horse. I got maybe 4 in the second hole, maybe 6 in the third hole, and 10 in the fourth hole. So I flip my book. I go, I'm covering 10 horses, and it looks like this. How much does it cost? Boom. It might be $8, whatever it is. So I know exactly. So I tell you how to put the ticket together. It's all based on your own handicap. That's why I think box betting is so bad. It's because you're wasting money on combinations that have no chance of coming in. I mean, if you really like a horse in a race, why on earth would you want to box it in a 4 or 5 horse box? You're just tying up, the fourth horse you threw in the box has no chance of winning, but 25% of your money has combinations of him winning. So the best way to go is, I call them betting combinations, more commonly known as the part wheel. And like I said, key your horse on top and put all in the bottom, and then work your way up and fill in your ticket. I mean, that's worked for me.
Well, I can tell you this, that when people, that's a habit they get into when you talk about an exotic bet like a trifecta or superfecta. They say, well, I'm just going to box 5 horses. Now, the only time I apply that philosophy is in Breeders' Cup. I will take 5 horses and box them for $1 in a superfecta. It costs $120 a race in Breeders' Cup, because there is nobody that I believe is going to sit there and try to separate who you think is only going to win in a Breeders' Cup race, because there are the competition is so high, such a high level of competition, and the depth of that level of competition is so deep in Breeders' Cup races. So that has been, the box in Breeders' Cup has been a winning formula for me, because you literally can have a good horse that you really think can win and run third or fourth. I do not suggest that on a day in, day out basis, and that's what I think really has to separate the mindset of people when they're starting these. They get very cavalier when it's a 10-cent base bet.
Mm-hmm.
They start covering a lot of stuff. They get cavalier. Oh, I could throw this in. It's 10 cents.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it develops, I think, bad betting habits, because what I believe you have to do in any race before you get into the pool that you want to enter into, whether it be win pool or super high five pool and anything else in between, you have to approach the race and look at it and handicap the race first. You have to handicap and see, well, who can win, who can't. Is there a bad favorite in there that I can beat, and who can I beat them with, and what are the live long shots I believe in the race. Then I think you can start building whatever bet you want in whatever pool you want to get into. And so boxing, simply for the sake of boxing, I think is a bad habit, with the exception, as I said, of Breeders' Cup days when I do that.
Right.
And so I think that people really have to start handicapping the race first. Just don't look at it and say, well, I'm going to take these 5 horses. I think you got to handicap the race, and as you say, you have to weed it down a little. You really have to sit there and say, how many horses do I think really can win this race? Let's get the win out of the way first.
Right.
Now, I have approached races with this exotic approach. I look at a race and I say, that 4 to 5 shot, I mean, he's liable to win, but boy, I'll tell you what, there's such juicy prices around him because they're over-betting him, that I think that if I could beat him and put him in the 2-hole with some pretty juicy horses and work around that I can get a very good overlay type of a price. Now, that's another angle I think that people can use. When you see a race that the favorite's being overbet, and you really believe that this favorite has an opportunity to get beat, or it's just a bad favorite, that's when you should really start handicapping and playing into the pool.
Yeah, one of the examples I give in my book is a betting strategy which is called a backup ticket, and not necessarily because the favorite might be vulnerable, but anything can happen in the race. What you do is
sure.
you have your key horse on top, and then what you do is you just flip the second place horses in the top slot and put the your key horse in the second slot just in case. So that way, if your key horse finishes first or second, then you increase your chances of winning, and it's just the same price as the original bet. So if you invested $4 and you want to do a backup ticket by putting your key horse in the second hole, then you spend another $4 or $8. So that's I have examples of different different strategies on how to bet and cover yourself and things like that too.
Now, obviously, practice makes perfect. Have you? What's the largest score you've made on your 10-cent superfectas there?
Okay, I'm assuming the IRS doesn't tune into your program. I'm just kidding.
Well, the IRS tunes into the parimutuel clerk, so you couldn't have cashed that without signing for it. So it don't make any difference.
I did. I was trying to be funny. But anyway, $2,200 on a dime, way back summer 2005 at Arlington. Yeah, and I had actually a backup ticket where it was in that same race, just a little saver ticket because it was a 50 to 1 shot I really liked. Mm-hmm. Lone speed in a turf race. Every other horse in the race at the second call was never closer than 10 lengths, and this was some cheap little speed 12.5 claimer going into an allowance race. And he opened up like 10 lengths, like right out of the gate. Anyway, he failed to hold on, but he did finish second. But I had him keyed on top of like a small saver bet. And if he would have hold on to win, I probably would have swept that whole pool, probably like 25 or 30 grand. But I did, fortunately have him on my main ticket. So that was, I think it was like 22.10, something like that for a dime. That was like the biggest one. Then, just some other ones, a lot, under 600, but that was like the biggest one there.
2217283. Didn't mean to hog up the show here, folks. So if you're listening out there, this is Race Talk for this Tuesday. I know that a lot of people are just pretty much exhausted with all the action over the weekend. But if you want to call up and maybe ask a certain thing about Paul or myself, or talk anything about racing, you can at 2217283. Outside of Las Vegas, particularly area code in front of it, 702, then 2217283. I can tell you there is. And this is, as we go along with these new exotic bets, the Sharpies, the big players, the Sharpies, and like you said, the people with the minds of mathematicians are starting to figure out how to use these pools and these base bets to their advantage. And I'll give you an example, and I don't know if this is prevalent in Southern California at Santa Anita, but the bigger players that play in this town horse racing, there's one big player that I sat down and had a good half-hour conversation with him about this. He'll bet, I don't know, maybe $1,000 into a superfecta, the dollar versions, etc.
Right.
And he will always, he says he always takes the 5 longest shots on the board and box them for a dime. His philosophy is, as you were just talking about with your lone 50-1 speed, if the race completely falls apart, he has an opportunity of backing into taking the whole pool down with the most ridiculous 4 horses in the race. So he uses the dime superfecta and the most outlandish horses in the race as insurance for his real bet. And he told me that he took down a pool once doing that. That it was, the race totally fell apart. He backed in and took down the pool of 30, 40,000, whatever track it was, doing that. And he uses the 10-cent super as you might say a backup, but he uses it as an insurance. He said, this is just an insurance bet. This is a throwaway bet in every race that I'm playing superfectas in. And it has worked out on occasion for him.
Yeah, I met a guy at Santa Anita up in the director's room one day, and he said 77,000 just boxing the 4 or 5 longest shots.
Right. Just
one lone ticket. That's one of the things about the 10-cent superfecta bet is that if your 10-cent ticket is the only one with the winning combination,
you'll get the
whole pool.
Yeah. And that he said this is no more than insurance on anything else you might bet or do in your life. He said, this is just an insurance bet. I'm not handicapping these horses. I'm looking at the board. Let's take some calls, see what happens here. Good morning. Hello.
Yeah, it's John in California. How are you?
Hi, John. How are you doing?
Very good, John. Ralph. 25-year player, and really enjoyed your historical races at Hollywood Park where you pull up some of the Hollywood Gold Cup winners, and they have you on the microphone. I just wanted to call and tell you.
Oh, yeah. When that was on when I was younger, I was the radio TV director there for a year. So they're using that stuff. Oh, it's good.
Yeah, it's when you go to the kiosk to pull up the race replays. They have the historical races that you pull up there. Thought it was great, and I've had some really good scores myself. I had Barbaro at 250 to 1 on futures right after he won the Laurel for Charity.
Wow.
You mentioned that a couple shows back.
Yeah.
You guys, some guys were at him at 50 to 1, and someone got down early. That was me.
Well, that's good. That'll be a score of a lifetime. I hope you took a Xerox copy of the ticket and bought a picture of Barbaro and stick it up in a frame somewhere.
Yeah, I have it on my license plate. I've got it at the Wynn. I bought a brand new STS Cadillac.
Oh, good for you.
Footbook on my license plate and says "Thank you, Barbara" on the outside of it.
Oh, fantastic! I love to hear stories like this. That's really neat. My friends got him right at 50 to 1 after he won that grass race. I think he won the Tropical Park Derby or something at Calder early.
Correct. I was in on him right around Thanksgiving. We were in Vegas.
There you go.
And it was really nice. So that was a good score. But anyways, I'd like to ask your guest. He talks about the dime supers. Do you think that there's really a benefit for using 10 cents other than the IRS sign up, or the dollar return is you're giving away 90% of your bet, and that's what really makes me a little skeptical, the 10-cent increment. And just wanted your guys' attitude on that you might have the race cold and you're giving away 90% of your winnings using the dime. So just my philosophy on that. Just wanted to see what you guys thought of that.
Oh, fantastic. What you think, Paul?
Well, one thing that people don't realize is that you can't avoid these sign-ups if you just, you still play the dollar, but you just punch it up in 10-cent increments. So if you have a, $120 5-horse box, you just punch up, 10, 12-horse box, $10, $12 boxes. And that way, I had a friend just not too long ago, I ran into at Hollywood Park, and that's exactly what he did. He hit he got back $2,200, but in 10 different pieces.
Yeah,
but you don't. I mean, if you're a dollar player, you still play your dollar. You're still going to get full value.
But Paul, I don't think the crux of this is not to avoid the IRS or whatever, because we all know those tricks.
Right.
The thing I think he was talking about is, I have an opinion,
right,
and I'm betting the superfecta, and I'm betting the dollar. But there are other people who are going to back into getting a piece of that pool and that win for me because it's a 10-cent increment. Is that correct?
Was that
yes,
that's
basically the gist of it, is that you're giving away 90% of your winnings by using the dime on the machine or the dime increment. And it's just that you might get into a bad habit, of saying 10 cent rather than saying the dollar. When you're right, you want to get paid the full amount.
Oh, well, then you can multiply the bet. Yeah, but Paul said it's not a problem.
Yeah, I mean, you're still good. If you're betting, I mean, even if you play a dollar, you're still going to, the payoff is, everything's calculated to a dime, and you're going to have it 10 times for your dollar.
Okay.
And then a lot of times you'll see bogus payoffs. So they'll say the dollar paid, $270,000, and there wasn't that much in the pool because that's the way the things are geared up.
Right. Actually, Paul, I think the environmentalists out there might have the biggest problem with this situation because we're killing more trees.
Oh,
for the paper.
That's the least we got to worry about with that oil spill out there.
That's right. Where's PETA now?
And by the other thing, Ralph, that you guys talk about, I wish that racing would have more future book action in Vegas, meaning that the true bookmaker is not there anymore, and that's really sad. And I can remember the early days of when I was very young at the Barbary Coast and the old Churchill Downs room there being smoky and so forth. It's really sad that Vegas has gone corporate and the true bookmakers are gone. That's really sad. I
can't echo that with you more. I just wish I was, I would trade the remainder of my life for being born early when it was the Rat Pack days and all that here in Las Vegas, because it has changed. It is corporate now, as the entire world has changed. Unfortunately, when you get old, you just want to go back. But the thing about that is, I remember when Caliente used to have future book wagers on the Santa Anita Handicap. They did a lot more than just the Kentucky Derby as well. Yeah, the futures. Now, I can tell you honestly that here in Las Vegas, no matter how much you think, well, look at that favorite, he broke down, he ain't even going to win, like Escondrea. Everybody thinks, well, the books locked up all the money on Escondrea. They're gonna make money on the futures. Well, you got to take a lot of money on Escondrea to offset people that are getting the winners of the Derby like yourself at 250 to 1. I mean, you readily told us you must have bet enough to buy a Cadillac. So and you know darn well Wynn's entire future book hold for the entire future book isn't enough to buy a Cadillac. Their hold in these future books now might be around, the pool might be about 40,000, maybe 50,000 tops, maybe in a big place like Wynn, maybe double that. Right. But when you talk about the extensions, and maybe it's because of how they approach it now. Maybe if they opened it up a little bit more and made it a bigger pot, they wouldn't have that problem like the guys did in the old days. But the guys in the old days were bookmakers. I mean, they gambled along with you.
That's very true. It's very true. And Ralph, can't thank you enough. You do a great job for our sport. You're the voice of reason, and I really appreciate everything you do for the sport, okay?
Well, not as much as I appreciate all of you out there listening, because I'm taking up an hour of your time each day, and I appreciate it. Thanks so much for the call.
Very good.
All right, we're going to take one more call here, Paul. Good morning. Hello.
Ralph, this is David in Las Vegas. Ralph, what is the name of this book, and where can you pick it up?
Paul's going to tell you right now, aren't you, Paul?
Okay, yes, I will. The name of the book is called The 10th Cent Superfecta Complete Guide to Wagering and Winning by Paul Lambrakis. And I have a website you could visit. It's 10 cent, the number 10, 10centsuperfecta.com.
Well, now, when you put the number 10, do you write out the word cent after it?
No. Yeah, the number 10.
You don't use that little icon, the cents icon. You have to spell out the word 10, cent.
The word, number 10, the word cent.
So it's 10 it's 10 CENT.
Right, superfecta.com.
Okay.
And if you want to order, you can also Gambler's Bookstore there in Las Vegas has the book, and also you can order it direct from today's Racing Digest on today'sracingdigest.com.
Okay. Now, Dave, do you play 10-cent supers?
Well, I play them a lot, but
do you need help in building it? Is that the deal, or do you just want to get some?
I don't really need help in building, but I like to read the other part of the book.
And what's the biggest 10-cent super you've hit?
Well, I would say maybe in the $400 or $500 range.
So that's that's $4,000 or $5,000 superfecta. I mean, that's a pretty good hit.
Yeah, but they're far and few between.
Well, I know that, but we always tee it up and try, don't we?
Yep.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
Thank you. Bye.
All righty. And again, Paul, do it again real quick, the website that they can get on.
Yeah, the website is 10centsuperfecta.com with the number 10. And also Gambler's Bookstore and today'sracingdigest.com.
All right. So you kind of put it's kind of like a guide to mathematically figuring out how to build the bets. Once we figured out the numbers or the horses to insert into the basic formula, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a cookbook approach. It's actually, let me tell the listeners, it's in a pocket. It's a pocket-sized booklet that you can take to the track with you every day. It's very durable, fits right in your program. And again, yes, you do the handicapping. I just tell you, how to put the tickets together and what they're going to cost, basically, and some basic playing tips and strategies for constructing tickets too.
I got to tell you, the more I talk to people, etc., the more the mainstream of people betting the races now are into exotics. And one wonders if when you look at the tote board, and the tote board is such an important and integral part of you actually building a bet because you want value, but you're basing value on a smaller and smaller portion of the entire handle of the race.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the win, place, and show handle are shrinking as exotic handles are building, yet the exotic handles and how people build bets and bet into the exotic are much influenced by the actual tote board action of the smaller pool. So, I mean, you take a look at a horse that, might be 10 to 1 on the morning line and you like him and you see him bet down to 3 to 1 and you say, well, now I got to key this horse because the value has gone, etc. And yet that is influencing you. And it's the smaller and shrinking part of the entire handle. That sometimes really blows my mind,
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too long ago. All we had to worry about was one place and show, and then if we wanted to, maybe a daily double, and then if we wanted to make some money, we had to use the parlay.
Yeah.
So now the people are just so overwhelmed with all these different choices. I mean, for a newcomer, it's just really intimidating.
It sure is. Not only understanding our sport and understanding the basics of handicapping our sport, but then adding the element of how do you play. Now, how do you play and optimize your chances of winning money after you've picked the horse that you like? But it's getting to a point where you have to be really cognizant, and this is nothing more than just knee-jerk reaction we don't even think about. But you got to be cognizant, especially at smaller tracks with smaller pools, that somebody can influence.
Yes.
The play in the major part of the handle in the race, which are the exotics, with a couple of $100, $300, $500, $1,000 on the win, place, and show pools, especially in the win pool. You see a horse getting bet early, and you perceive it to be a hot horse, and it might be somebody trying to manipulate, although I don't think that's common practice. It's something that you got to think about nowadays because we are all basing our exotic wagers, at least single race exotic wagers, on the influences of how the money's being bet on the board, and the money being bet on the board in the win pool is such a small portion of the total handle in the race anymore.
Now, that's true. Yeah, you're right about the tracks with the smaller handles. I mean, someone could put down $200 or $300 early, and then to throw people off the scent, and then gradually cancel out and get better odds on the horse they want to bet.
Right.
But that's the smaller track. That's why I try to limit my play to the major tracks like Santa Anita Hollywood Park and
sure,
Belmont, Gulfstream, big tracks like that where that's less likely to occur.
Yeah, you gotta you can push people and influence people in a false thought that wow, there's a hot horse. Look, the barn must have bet him, and it's not always the case. But these are the trials and tribulations of betting horses, and no matter what it is, the horse player will sit there and take whatever parameters you give them. We are the most durable and fan there is out there, the most durable customer. We take a lot and we still come back, and because we enjoy it so much. Again, Paul Lambrakis, a pleasure having you on the show again. Give a quick plug to the book again before we wrap up this Race Talk show.
Okay, thank you, Ralph. It was my pleasure as well. It's called the 10 Cent Superfecta Complete Guide to Wagering and Winning. It's available there in Las Vegas at the Gambler's Bookstore. And if you want to visit my website, it's 10 cent, superfecta.com. or visit today'sracingdigest.com and for ordering information. And again, thank you so much for having me on today.
And say hello to all my friends there in Southern California and tell them to start breeding some horses so we get bigger fields.
Yeah, we got a lot of work ahead of us in California.
We sure do. Thanks a lot. Thanks so much, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Ralph.
All right, Paul and Breck is spending some time with us on the day after the big weekend of racing. Now we're going to start, we'll take a small breath, and now we're going to start gearing up for the Belmont Stakes that happens on this Saturday. Again, the Race Day Las Vegas radio programs that are usually on Fridays will be preempted this week only for a shopping marathon on this station. So there will be no shows on Friday, either the racing or the sports side, but we have plenty left to do tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday before the Belmont on Saturday, and, of course, back on Saturday for the Race Day Las Vegas radio program Saturday morning. So until tomorrow, we can tell you this, just keep talking racing. And I hope we helped you try to figure out those 10-cent supers, because in these days and times, that's where you can turn a toothpick into a lumberyard. Great exotic wagering. I want to thank Paul a lot for joining us today, and, of course, always you for listening. The sports show is coming up next after the top of the hour break, and until next week, just keep talking racing, everybody.